The following production is intended for entertainment purposes only. We are not legal professionals. We do not speak for any government agency, and the opinions expressed here are our own. Relax.
Because that would have been rude.
That would have been rude and embarrassing. And if there's one thing I'm not, if there's two things I'm not,
Rude or embarrassing.
rude or embarrassing.
That's what they say.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
Lots of people have said that about
Sometimes I'll be describing you and I'll be like, he's kind of tall, got blonde hair. I'll be like, no, he's not rude, not embarrassing. Oh, Clayton, I know that guy. That's usually how it goes.
Oh, Clayton Blackwood. Yeah, he's not very rude.
Is that the guy that interrupted the sheriff to tell him he was wrong in front of the governor? Yeah, that guy. That's the guy.
Man, I get hot flashes thinking about the times. Do you get a physical reaction whenever you think about like cringe moments or times that you've embarrassed yourself in the past?
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
do? What's your cringe like action? What do you do?
Um Honestly, I kind of loathe self-loathe and just think
You,
about how stupid I am. I'd be
you
like,
just
you're
I,
you're such an idiot. You
I
are such
imagine
an idiot.
I imagine you're sitting on the couch watching a show, like your wife and your kids are out there with you, and then all of a sudden, like you're not paying attention to the screen at anything. You're just thinking about the time you dropped a pass from your dad through a football and you dropped it and
Yeah.
you're thinking, like, but no one else. All of a sudden, they just hear you go, mm.
I think that actually happens fairly often. I'm pretty sure my kids could attest.
You know what I do? And this is a move that I use for lots of things, but it comes from the same place. I say the name Jesus. Like almost, ugh, man, this is embarrassing. I'm gonna be vulnerable. It actually comes from like a childhood Sunday school reaction that I got from if there's ever a, because like I said, I grew up Pentecostal, so we believed in demons and we believed in rebuking demons in the name of Jesus. They said if you ever like so when you're in Sunday school, if you're ever having a bad dream, that's the devil torturing you, which is something great to tell a child.
He's pinching your feet.
Yeah. I thought I felt Freddy Krueger tickle my foot one time, like in the physical world. But anyway, so from a child, my reaction is they say, at the name of Jesus, every knee has to bow and every tongue must confess. So demons can't even be in the same room. If you say Jesus, they
Yeah, I
have to
remember that.
flee.
Yeah.
So I believed that, and I still think there's some juice to that. But I believe that, and like I had adopted it quickly, and that was my number one tool in the arsenal was the name of Jesus. And what that led to later was I quickly developed lots of cringe moments in my life where, I maybe took it too far in a moment, or maybe said a regrettable word in a conversation to where that would pop up in my memory and almost like, oh, I'm rebuking it. Like, that's such an ick cringe thing. Like, I need to get that away from me. Like,
Yeah.
Jesus. So now we'll be watching, everyone will be sitting on the couch and we'll be watching a show. And all of a sudden like I cringe, I physically cringe and I'll say, Jesus. And it's to the point now to where like my family doesn't even acknowledge it
Do
anymore.
they do they think you have Tourette's?
Well, it's funny because I think I might have like an evangelical Tourette's. Even
Yeah.
Pentecostal Tourette's is what I have.
Yeah.
I'll just start shouting, "Ilorobo Sunda." Just start.
Just
Yeah.
rebuking people at the grocery store
Yeah, I was just thinking walking in the grocery store.
in the name of Jesus.
Dude, that's not too far from like Like if you were to tell a Pentecostal person, especially like in the late 90s, early 2000s, but you could be describing any whatever the story is, and if the scenario came up and I was just walking down the aisle at the grocery store pleading the blood of Jesus and praying in tongues, that would not be a far-fetched story to be like if you were to walk in on that part of the story at church
Yeah.
and someone would say, I was just walking in through Walmart and speaking in tongues and raising my hands and pleading the blood of Jesus. That
Yeah.
wouldn't be far-fetched. People would go, oh yeah, I could see Sister Charlotte doing that. I could see Brother Justin doing that. Like that was
Yeah,
that
for sure.
the act of like walking down the aisle pleading the blood of Jesus is like, yeah, that's not a far-fetched thing for us.
Yeah.
But that's why Pentecostals were cooler than, than Baptists.
Also, Pentecostals could smoke,
Yeah, dude.
but and Baptists couldn't. Man, Baptists couldn't do any of that stuff. Baptists couldn't even use candy cigarettes because it had the appearance of evil.
Oh man, did you hear the latest Bart Ehrman podcast? Do you listen to
Um,
Bart Ehrman's podcast?
I don't usually because his laugh drives me crazy. I listened though to probably three quarters of the one that you sent.
Oh, the latest one that I sent,
Yeah, about
being born again.
yes,
Man, that was a really interesting podcast because like as a whatever as a Christian, growing up in America, I thought to be a Christian you had to a say, well, I mean, because that's what it was taught from the pulpit. To be a Christian you had to say the Lord's Prayer, whatever that means. You had to ask Jesus into your heart. You had to be born again. um well, one of the points I remember of contention between the Pentecostals and the Baptists was that, and he talks about this in the podcast, was that was losing your salvation. Like Pentecostals, we believed that you could be saved and then do something to get yourself out of favor with God and then not be saved. Like you can at one
right,
point be saved and then later on do something to where if you were to die at this moment, you were going to hell. That's
right.
why we had things like daily sanctification. And that was a point of contention in the Pentecostal world between one denomination and another was daily sanctification. What were you?
Were you a Pentecostal holiness?
No, I wasn't. They were in the group. I
Okay,
wasn't Pentecostal holiness. I was Church of God, OG
okay,
Pentecostal.
okay.
Um, so in this Bart Ehrman podcast, he talked about the evangelical point. I heard this from Baptist kids. This wasn't a Pentecostal view, but so like if someone were to be saved and then later on in life obviously deviate from the Christian path, the what I would say the Baptist answer or what he would say is the evangelical answer would be, well, they just weren't saved to begin with. Whatever they had at the beginning was not, they weren't actually saved.
Right.
Um that is I guess was is not the, and it makes sense because Western evangelicalism is really only as old as America. But that has not been the view of Christianity for most of the past 2,000 years of asking Jesus into your heart to be saved, and that, whatever end of losing your salvation can mean. Either you can't or you can. Either way, that wasn't even in the vernacular for most Christians. Like that wasn't a
Yeah,
thought because you had to cross one base to get to that second base. And they didn't even have that first base for most of Christendom.
yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think you're spot on.
Yeah. What did the Baptists say? Or was that even a conversation of losing your salvation?
Well, yeah. So not not really. I think that pretty much all Baptists would have said that that once saved, always saved. I know that like I think Nazarenes believed that you could lose your salvation. Certain, definitely Pentecostals. Um, Methodists, maybe. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. I don't think that I don't think that in any Baptist circles that,
Methodists might, because the Church of God came out of Methodist, out of the American Methodist Church.
yeah. But we, yeah, and I think that the way that we would kind of justify our being 100% correct is that if somebody walked away, that they were never actually saved.
Yeah.
You know, because if they were saved, then God wouldn't let them do it, or he would, you know, he would pull them back or whatever. Um, I remember, like, I believed that he would kill you if he had to.
Yeah.
I, oh my goodness, I used, man, I don't know if I want to say that. There, I had prayed that God, if somebody hadn't repented, that God would take them before they, you know, went farther or whatever. How, dude, how terrible is that? And I thought it was loving. I thought it was like super
Yeah.
spiritual. I thought it was
Well, you
like,
were told that's what it was.
I was like, that's the ultimate love, is that you love somebody so much that you would just wish
Pray
that
that they
they
would
would
die.
die. Ooh, that's gross.
um, yeah, I remember I remember being like flabbergasted the first time I was having a conversation with all these conversations happened when I was living at the group home in Tennessee because that's when I became super spiritual.
And remind me
I
the age.
13 to 18.
Okay.
That's when, because that's when I discovered the social currency that being a super Christian
Oh,
give me.
yeah.
Because, yeah, we had this thing. It's so silly thinking about it now, but we had like these campus elections every year where like we would elect each other most Mr. Personality, Miss, social, Miss, Miss or whatever. Well, I got Mr. Home for Children, Mr. HFC, and Best Christian Character 2 years in a row.
My man.
And my brother in Christ, I could get away with murder on that campus. I walked on water. I out of fear of embarrassing anyone, I'm not going to tell stories, but I could get away with whatever I wanted to on that campus because I learned how to use that social currency of Mr. Christian, Mr. Pentecostal. So that's when I was having these conversations. I was having a East Tennessee is super Southern Baptist. We have the Southern Baptist blah blah blahs, the Southern Baptist conventions, the Southern Baptist presidents and deans and deacons, whatever. They're all there in East Tennessee. Like they all like to go through there. Um, I was having a some sort of debate with a Baptist kid at school. Must have been maybe freshman year in high school, and I remember saying something like, "Oh, well, that person used to be a Christian," and they're like, "Used to be a Christian." I was like, "Yeah, they were a Christian at one point, but obviously, they abandoned the faith." They're like, "Oh, well, they were never actually a Christian to begin with." I was like, I thought like, "Oh, I didn't communicate well enough." Like, "Oh no, they were a Christian,"
Right.
and they were like, that was the first time I had been exposed to the idea of like, "Oh no, they were never actually a Christian to begin with." And
Oh yeah.
that always struck me as like, oh, that's, I mean, I see the logic train. I don't follow that logic train, but I see it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
But
just in us that fear of, that's what it was just a constant feer of like, if you don't do it right, well, he can take it from you. He can Indian give this gift.
yeah. But I guess the constant fear of the Baptist was that, well, I think the ultimate fear was that he would take your life, and somebody might be praying that that might happen.
See,
Um,
I would have thought from the outside looking in that the fear of the Baptist would have been like, oh, well, I need to make sure that I do everything right so that the first one was good, so that the first one sticks, because I only got one shot at being saved.
Well, I probably from 13 years old to probably 17 years old, probably on a nightly basis, prayed for salvation.
Yeah,
Some form of some sort of form of salvation prayer, because I just wanted to make real certain that I wasn't gonna go to
triple check.
hell, that I wasn't gonna go to hell, while I was sleeping.
That's something a loving God wants you to live in is fear of eternal
Absolutely.
damnation.
Well, and you deserve it because you are kind of a piece of shit, if we're being honest. Uh,
You know why
you,
you're such a piece of shit? Really, it's just because you were born. You were born into sin. You were born
yeah,
deserving death.
you're a little asshole.
Yeah.
Um,
So why is it okay? I mean, it's never good, but why is it okay to wipe out all of a group of people, even the women and children? Is because
different. Well, they've got a different line. Okay,
okay.
you know what I mean. They're of a different breed. I think
Oh,
God says, I don't know, but I think God says that's cool.
okay. Yeah. We're not gonna lead with the it's different race reason. We're going to say is because they have a different God.
Okay,
They happen to have a different God because they're a different race. But we're not going to say it's because they're a different race. We're going to say it's because they have a different God. The wrong God, by the way.
we're
Uh, so kill it.
we're we're probably being obnoxious at this point.
Yeah.
I think we're being funny, but somebody else might think we're being obnoxious.
This is hyperbole, folks. We don't mean any of
That's
this.
right. We're good. We're good at hyperbole.
We're just regular old goof offs. Yeah, Iran Contra affair.
That's what we're. That's it. So so yeah. To bring it full circle.
No, yeah, man, I
So
want to keep on doing this. And if anything, it's a good hang and it's a good expression, like it's a good creative expression. And I think people are interested in hearing about our spiritual ramblings because I think everyone has a version of this. Everyone has these
yeah,
thoughts. People
yeah.
want to hear about us as dads or us as parents because there's a lot of parents out there. People need to hear about how other people manage their own mental health because everyone has mental health issues of some sort. And the only way we're going to know how to get through it is if we're honest about how we're getting through it.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I know you can read the expert books and go to the websites and all the Instagram motivational pages, but really you have to have long form conversations of like, how are you staying away from the edge? Because I'm having a hard time staying away from the edge, you know?
I wanted to say something really cool about living on the edge.
Living
Uh,
on the edge.
I live on the edge, bro.
Did you have a ditch or gully? I know there was one in Hayesville because I visited it as a child. Did you have any sort of ditch or gully alley system that you referred to as Dead Man's Curb that like was just a particularly perilous path that you could take your bike down as a kid?
Uh, I mean, not that there was a path like that, but that wasn't what we called it.
You
I'm
didn't
not
call it Dead Man's Curve?
right. Yeah. No, we had that system though.
We had like a ditch drain off coming from a culvert in my neighborhood in Midwest City, Oklahoma. In Oklahoma City, we had a dead man's curb, and my cousin Dallas had one in Hayesville that I went to go visit him, and they called it Dead Man's Curve, and it was just a particularly
Yeah.
hazardous gully to ride your bike. I used to say, quote, I used to invoke the spirit of Steven Tyler whenever I would we had like this 6 foot in my mind it was 6 foot. It was probably only like a foot and a half, but it was this
Right.
big drop off to get into the gully. and I, I would say out loud, I'm living on the edge.
Because you were.
And then nose down into there.
Yeah.
And I would come up, I would go through the path and I would come up, and you had to commit. Like when you go down Dead Man's Curve, if you slam on your brakes, you're going to eat shit. So you
Did
have
anyone did anyone come back from Dead Man's Curve?
well, you kind of experience a little death of your own when every time you go through Dead Man's Curve. Every time I would come up, my cousin Shannon was with me. She was my first best friend. My cousin Shannon was with me. She would not go down Dead Man's Curve, and she would just she would huff and shake her head.
Are we on a
Like
like a BMX bike? What kind of gear are you working with?
every bicycle I had until I was an adult was a hand-me-down bicycle, and most of them were from a female cousin. So they all had the bar that
So
went.
that's
My first bike, my first bike was a female bike, and it happened to be my cousin Audrey, who she might listen to this. She's just a couple of years older than me. But my cousin Audrey was the Wichita. She was in the Wichita family. I was in the Oklahoma City family. Um, her grandpa, my uncle Dorsey, would bring me all their leftovers. Whenever they outgrew their bicycles or whatever, he would bring them to me so I could enjoy them like new. My
yeah.
first bike was, I think it was her bicycle. Had the girl bar in the bottom, and it had the beads that go blink, 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 blink,
Yeah,
blink.
yeah.
I had those. That was on my first bike. Uh,
What color was it? Was it like
It was
normal
pink.
color?
It was pink and white when I first got it.
Dang, how
I
old were you?
know. I
How old
know.
how old were you?
7.
Did you care about that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I did, and I would have been pissed because I was the age that Cash is right now. I went to my grandpa's garage. My grandpa, who had been passed away for 3 years at this point, found a very old can of black spray paint and laid it sideways on my driveway with nothing underneath it and went and then flipped that bad boy over and on the other side. So you have like this double murder outline of a bicycle and black spray paint on my driveway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't remember any adult ever saying anything to me about that. I don't remember one person ever mentioning that to me. And that's exactly how that happened.
That you shouldn't do that.
That I shouldn't do that, or hey, why did you do this? Like, oh no. Like I just took a can of black spray. I would have in my mind now in 2025, if Cash had a can of black spray paint in his hand, I would be very concerned. Like if
Well, first off, you would know about it. Somehow you would be aware.
I, I would. It could be
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the morning, and if he put his hand on a can of black spray paint, I would wake up because I know something horrible
Yes.
is about to.
Something's not right.
Something is afoot. Um, yeah, I mean, like I could have. I mean, at this point, I could have like spray painted the bicycle black, smoked a Marlboro Red and killed a Bud Heavy, and it would have gotten the same response that it did. No one would have cared. No one would have found out. And if they did find out, it wouldn't have even have registered as a thing that they should notice.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there he goes.
Did I tell you about that? He must have been. I think he was less than 12. I want to say he might have been 10. Uh, I was shown a house down in Hayesville, and there's this kid on a scooter, and he's just kind of a badass looking kid, just doing his own thing.
Yeah.
He's smoking a cigarette. Like he's riding a scooter, smoking a cigarette.
Hell yeah, he is.
And car comes and he throws it down, and I'm just like, this kid. And this is, but I was also like, I mean, it's Hayesville, like,
That
uh,
060, baby.
yeah. Uh, after the car passed, I think he ditched his scooter and he and a friend had both had these branches they were walking around with.
Yeah, just
let's let's
menaces.
let's just check this house out and let's get out of here. Lock
I don't like the look of the
lock your
locals.
cars. Yeah, lock your doors.
Yeah, I was one of those kids. I was that kid. It was such a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde because I would be the kid that was smoking the cigarette and like had a BB gun that I would hide in the bushes. And maybe you might get a, I was trying to think of the word, a spark plug through a window if you're a particularly nasty neighbor and you're always bitching at me whenever you drive by, your window might be busted out with a spark plug in the morning when you come out for work. I was that kid. But also on Sunday, and maybe they were right. Maybe the Baptists were onto something. On Sunday, I would be raising my hands and praise and worship and
Did you
swaying
stomp?
along.
Or did you stomp and like boogie?
Oh, I did it all. I did it all. I was best Christian character. Anything that a Pentecostal kid would should do, I did. And I did
So
it the loudest and the best.
so I've never actually experienced a Pentecostal
I don't
service.
want to make fun of that. I honestly don't want to offend anyone with that.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but I was watching a video of a friend's service, and I was seeing stuff I'd never seen before. Like they had banners, and they were running around with banners, and
Very, very
there
normal thing to see.
there was this one thing that they were doing with their hands like this, and they would stomp, like
Me and
not
Ash,
not stomp, but like I don't
yeah,
even know how you describe it. You know what it is. It's like
yeah,
the Pentecostal boogie.
I can imagine. Everything was permitted. Everything was permitted at these Pentecostal praise fests. I took Ashley when me and Ashley first were engaged and then became married. I tried for a couple years to get her into a good Pentecostal church, and she just didn't bite. She wasn't having it. I tried real hard, and it just didn't stick. But one of the churches I took her to was in Newport News, Virginia. This must have been 2007, the year Caleb was born. And there was a man, and normally this wouldn't be an important part of the story, but he was a white man. Like he could have been blonde hair, but he didn't have blonde hair. He had brown hair, but he was like very obviously European descent, right? He was a
Okay.
Caucasian man. He was dressed head to toe in a Native American feather and bead outfit, like one that you would see at a powwow for like a competitive powwow line dancer. He had like the cattails coming off in the different directions. He had a fan made out of feathers in each hand. I think he had the fan of feathers in one and like a stick with a ball on it in the other with like a piece of leather coming off of it. All these things would dangle and bells, and the spirit got to moving. People started dancing and speaking and praying. And this fella, who he didn't have a beard, but he did have a very thick mustache. Like, obviously, he's not Native American. Dressed like Geronimo, got down to dancing and to jingling and to waving his fan. I can see why Ashley maybe didn't like this. No one, the real crime is that no one pointed it out. No one
Yeah.
stopped this fella to say,
How,
"Hey, dude, what the fuck are you doing?"
that's what I'm saying. So he shows up and
He
and
comes
they're
out of
just
his car in the parking lot.
puts his headdress on, gets his gets his loincloth all situated.
Well, first he puts out his cigarette,
Okay, right.
empties the rest of his roadie that he had because he doesn't want his car smelling like booze.
Gets everything all fixed up. Walks in. The usher says, "Would you like a bulletin?" No thanks. Walks And so he's just like sitting there during the announcements.
And here's another thing. This wasn't a mega church per se, but it was like it had two levels. It had two levels on it, and he was at near the like maybe in the first three rows of the bottom level near the stage. So he got there early. He got in the parking lot, did all of that, and then got there early enough to where the entire congregation filled in around him while he was, getting a cup of coffee, going to the restroom, saying hi to
Do you
Sister Charlotte.
do you think that he trying to be funny, do you think? Or was he
No, no.
like he thought was he the dude? Was he the dude? And we all know this guy that he's an old white guy.
Uh-huh.
He smokes, he's been smoking since he was a kid.
Yeah,
He wears tight Wrangler jeans,
you're describing
lots
my
of
father. Keep going.
lots of turquoise
Yeah.
rings, necklaces, maybe a
Uh-huh.
bear claw, something like that.
Uh-huh.
And he's whiter than you or I.
Yeah, you're describing family members of mine.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
the person who has the soul of an early 1800s fur trapper from the Rocky Mountains. Like he could, he
Joey Bro.
yeah, Joey.
Joey Bro is that who we're talking about?
No, I'm gonna tell you this. Joey Bro was you might have a Joey Bro uncle in your family, but Joey Bro was a notch above my people.
Okay.
Joey Bro was the cool badass uncle that drove the Trans Am and listened to White
Okay.
Snake, but he had some scratch. Or at least he had the
Yeah.
appearance of
Okay.
having some money. He would go out to the bars. We didn't have we didn't have Joey Bro resources,
I gotcha.
but we were in the same community. Like
Gotcha.
he had the nice trailer at the end of the lot with the
Maybe the
Trans
double
Am
wide.
double wide. Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have it. We had a single wide.
Uh yeah. I was talking to my brother the other day. All of my childhood memories come from my grandma's house, except for one. Did I tell you about? I know we were talking about early memories before, but I remember the first time I laughed. It was at our trailer. We lived in a trailer, and so like this was had to been 3 years old or younger. We were living in a trailer, and we were going outside from the trailer to the car, and there was snow on the ground. We were all bundled up in coats, and my mom said, "I'm so cold, I'm gonna freeze my wiener off." I laughed and laughed. Like I remember falling over, holding my belly, like ah ha, 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 ha. She said she has a wiener. She's freezing it off. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, so I did live in a trailer before. I like the only memory I have of it is my mom saying it was so cold she was gonna freeze her wiener off. Foundational memory. So I remember being embarrassed. I remember pissing my pants and my Aunt Ivina smacking the shit out of me. I remember visiting my father in prison, and I remember my mom saying she's gonna freeze her wiener off. And I remember having a dream of dead Jesus in church.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I was actually last night as I was laying in bed, I was I was trying to think of like earliest memories or most vivid memories of childhood.
Uh-huh.
And it's interesting the ones that stick, like the things that you can picture, that you can almost smell,
Yeah.
like like you can bring it up. And then there's others that you're like, I have no idea. I don't even know where we moved a lot when I was a kid. Uh, and so it's like I don't even know where we lived at that time or like what it's interesting to me to think of what was happening in the world at say in my life in 1991 or some major event like 1987, like what was I doing in life, how old was I, you know.
Have you heard people talk about memories, like what memories actually are?
um no, not in any kind of depth.
Well, I don't know. So I don't know on how much the research has developed since then, or since this, but years ago when I was in college, we talked about this in a sociology class. It was in something when I was getting my degree in criminal justice. So it was in some sort of sociology, social science class. But they were talking about what memories actually are. And so is Margaret smoking in there?
Silas.
Oh, Silas.
Silas is hacking up his lung.
Um, what they say memories are, so like if you think of a memory, think of like your mom's face or whatever, your brain doesn't actually like pull up a Polaroid of your mom's face. What it does is it like on cue, it recreates the image based on the pattern that you have from all of your inputs up to this point. And it can even be changed it can be changed by like your mood or by your emotions of that memory. Like if you think of a sad memory, you can almost picture it with like a blue overtone or like with dark lighting. Or, if someone is mad at you, you can imagine when you think about that memory, you can imagine them being bigger than what they actually were, or maybe
Hmm.
yelling at you when in reality they weren't yelling. What I'm getting at is memories are actually a real-time recreation of the event, not a recall of that event. Like
Yeah.
whenever you imagine like your conversation you had between you and your dad, what you're doing is you are real-time recreating that in your mind. You're not pulling up a Polaroid of that event. That's
Yeah.
why me and you can experience something in the same room and have two very different recollections of what happened because we're not actually pulling up a still frame, we're recreating it in our mind.
Well, and I'm sure that as you deviate little by little as you retell the story,
Yeah.
um, that you get farther and farther from reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not so offensive. Like if you hear that, like the further along you get, the more further you get from reality. You could like be offended at the idea of like, oh no, I remember this. Like you said, I remember the smell. I remember every single detail until you learn that actually it can be from a second ago. Like I can have the memory of the
Yeah.
sentence I just said, and it's actually not a Polaroid recall. It's a recreation. My brain is in real time recreating what I think that memory is. Not what it was, what I think it is, what I think it was.
Which is kind of scary when you think of like, they say that eyewitnesses are sometimes the worst, or sometimes the worst witnesses
Yeah.
because our memory is so and it's so easily influenced.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you can absolutely remember something or someone in a way that just simply wasn't true or
My
wasn't them.
my son Caleb has memories and like me and his mom have both noticed like have talked about this. He has memories of like a Christmas thing that he swears happened back when he was a little kid. He thinks that he saw me in a Santa outfit. He was like, "Oh, one year dad dressed up as Santa for Christmas." That has never happened.
Well, that's just probably previous life
Yeah, I mean, it could be something weird like that. I,
or either previous life or like a
timeline.
different timeline.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't considered that. I haven't given that much thought, but he has a memory and I've seen other versions of this, probably countless other versions of this, but he has a memory that like he was so emotionally involved in this. Like he was getting emotional whenever we were mocking him, like, hey, dude, that never happened. He was like, I remember, like he was adamant. He's like, I remember dad in a Santa Claus outfit. I'm like, hey, dude, I remember every Santa or every Christmas in your lifetime. I was there and that never happened. Like it just happens to be I was at all of your Christmases and that
Yeah.
never happened. but he's adamant that so yeah, you can you can implant memories like pretty easily. I think you can implant memories. Now imagine
Eh,
if you're a government organization that wants to influence
Oh,
mass
geez.
people, and you
Yeah,
had unlimited resources to devote to researching this.
man, that's probably one of the most troubling things I've learned in the past. I don't know, past while. Uh, I'm really bothered by learning about the the techniques that the CIA was using to destabilize other countries,
Yeah.
um, and recognizing that they did the same thing in our own,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, pallets of bricks on corners actually starts to make sense.
Yeah, I know it's weird. And people will say that you're a conspiracy theorist just for even mentioning that. But
Hmm.
uh you don't have to look very far. Like it's almost like it's a willingness to, like you're willfully avoiding evidence at this point if you don't start putting pieces together.
Yeah, and so to think about the division, the families that have been torn apart, the communities, just society in general, and our own government has been a part of it. Um, that's that's a not a great. That's not a very patriotic feeling.
Okay, I have four I have four CIA operations that I'm going to describe. Three of them 100% happened and are verifiable by Freedom of Information Acts. The other one is largely corroborated, but it's not 100% verifiable. But there has been a series of Hollywood motion pictures made out of it, but it's not 100% verifiable like the other three. I'm going to read you these operations and you tell me if you think it's real or Hollywood. Okay? I'll just
Okay.
tell you three of them are real and one of them's Hollywood. And the other one that's Hollywood probably actually happened also. Uh, Scratch that. It's going to be three, not four, because we already talked about Iran Contra. All right, this other one, I'm not going to tell you the name of the operation because you'll be able to figure it out. But was a CIA mind control project that ran publicly from 1953 to 1973, not publicly, documented from 1953 to 1973, 20 years of this. It was Cold War paranoia is what fueled it. Fear that Soviets and Chinese had mind control techniques, so we needed to beat them to it. The goal was to develop interrogation, psychological warfare, and a potential Manchurian candidate. The methods used were LSD experiments on U.S. citizens, on unknowing U.S. citizens administered by the CIA, sensory deprivation on prisoners and people in mental institutions, electroshock therapy, induced amnesia, and personality manipulation on prisoners and people in mental institutions, hypnosis, subliminal programming, safe houses, and brothels. Um, I'm kind of gonna give it away with that if I go into that.
I'm going to say true, 1,000% true. But go ahead.
Okay, this I was describing. I wasn't even really into describing all of it. Um, some notable people that were affected by this was Frank Olson, an army scientist, allegedly dosed with LSD and was pushed or fell from a New York City hotel window in 1953 before he was supposed to testify about it. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, participated in the Harvard LSD experiments, which were funded by MK Ultra, and Charles Manson and the Manson family was connected to the CIA program known as MK Ultra. This is not the Hollywood. This
What do you
one,
mean they're connected with?
they had CIA handlers. The Manson family. There's a bunch of verifiable connections you can research on that. I just don't have the time or
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
sources in front of me, but the Manson family was connected to, they had CIA handlers for some reason.
Okay.
And the CIA handlers that they had were part of MK Ultra. This has all really happened.
So on a local level, that would be an a narcotics detective has you on his list as an informant,
Yeah.
right? You are connected to this detective who has this job,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah. So it was a mind control project connected to the Manchurian Candidate, which is going to be part of something else that we talk about. And it was dosing people with LSD in an attempt to get to develop a true serum and an attempt to like more research on like psychic spies. This was all part of that. And this 100% happened as MK Ultra. Next one. So that was true. I'm not going to tell you the name of this. You can guess if it's real or Hollywood. Um, this is connected to MK Ultra. See possible real. This was. I can't use my notes on here because it'll give it away. This was a CIA. It was part of MK Ultra, part of mind control, where they developed soldiers that had specialized training that could only be activated under certain circumstances. And if those if the that training wasn't activated, the soldier didn't know he had this training. So the soldier went through this special like program to carry out this very specific protocol, and that protocol was to be activated by an event. And if that event did not happen, the soldier didn't even know that he had been trained, he or she had been trained in this.
So is the question whether or not we tried this or whether or not we were successful with this?
If the CIA actually tried this.
Oh, 100% yes.
Okay. This is not 100% verifiable by Freedom of Information, but it's tied to a very real project called Operation Treadstone by the CIA. And this has not been confirmed, but like I said, it was part of MK Ultra, allegedly. It was part of MK Ultra. The Bourne Identity was based on this. A couple
Yeah.
other, the Manchurian Candidate was based on this.
Just
Um,
by the way, from what I can tell, even if you mention MK Ultra, a lot of people are going to immediately label you as a
conspiracy.
conspiracy theorist nut job, which is interesting in light of what we're talking about.
It's 100% verifiable. I mean, just even if you take like the Bourne Supremacy, the Jason Bourne stuff out of it, and Manchurian Candidate stuff out of it, MK Ultra really happened. Verifiable by lots of different sources. Like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was in the Harvard LSD experiments. The Harvard LSD experiments were funded by the CIA. Like there is
Yeah.
a direct
And
link there.
yeah, and so when we talk about the CIA's involvement, it's funding, it's what,
Direction, supervision.
yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, like it's not Agent Ted from the CIA that's carrying out these experiments. Agent Ted is putting together the scientists that are telling them, "Hey, I want to know if there's a liquid that we can give people to make them tell the truth whether they want to or not. Get
yeah,
to work."
yeah. And I'm certain that there was torture involved in some of those
Yes.
tests. Um, Something that I was thinking of the other day, it, and I think it was when I was listening to that Mike Baker episode. Whoever it was, I don't know who it was. Um, do you remember? Were you at that drug and gang conference that was at the airport, Hilton, or something like that? Um, I'm not sure if you were. No,
No,
I
I
guess
never went. I never went to
okay.
anything there.
Well, there was a guy from the DEA there, and he had spent time in Colombia, no, Afghanistan, somewhere, I don't know. And his presentation was about the opiate crisis we were having, back then. and talking about the poppy fields and all this kind of stuff. Well, he was showing going through these through his pictures, and somebody asked how much, what's the street value of that field, right? In terms of how much opium could you get from the whatever. And he said, well, and he started to kind of think about it, and he said, I can't really say because that this one's one of ours, but and then he started talking, and I was just thinking,
One of ours.
whoa, why do we have a giant field of poppy? Obviously, you know, because of black ops and because of things that, and I guess I'm not even totally. I'm not saying that we need to know every operation that's going on. I understand the need for security and the need for secrecy in some cases, but
So yeah, this is perfect that you said that. So it like you when you say, "Oh, there's Poppy there, obviously to fund our CIA Black Ops." I can imagine like Travis or like an intelligent skeptic would say, "Hey, dude, that sounds like horseshit. What do you mean fund a CIA Black Op? Like obviously that's Hollywood." Until you look into the Iran Contra affair. And not too long ago, we were both alive. Most people today were alive, or at least whatever. There's a lot of people that were alive in this time where we illegally sold weapons, however you want to call it, weapons of war, to one terrorist group to fund another terrorist group so we can for our CIA Black Op operations. Like that
with
100% has happened
with the goal of what
with the
was that?
goal of changing the politics in other countries,
Yeah,
with
of
the
of
of overthrowing a democratically elected president.
exactly of interfering. That's one of the things that kind of blows my mind too is we've done so much to manipulate the rest of the world.
And it's
Like,
crazy that they're upset at us for that.
you think, yeah, all of a sudden, all of a sudden, uh, you can I recognize why I don't know, like why some people might not like us that much.
Yeah. So this is crazy stuff that the US has done that if you explain it, it makes you sound like a conspiracy theorist. Problem is there's receipts. Like that's conveniently ignored by most of everyone, but like Freedom of Information and the CIA's own website, you can find the receipts for how this happened, or for the Freedom of Information Acts that outline this. Something else I'm going to talk about, or just do the same thing. I won't tell you the operation. You tell me if it's real. Uh, I'll just tell you it's real. This is this happened in 1962, and this was caused by the Cold War was going on. The U.S. wanted to remove Fidel Castro from power. Bay of Pigs failed in 1961, where the Bay of Pigs happened. I won't go into that, but the U.S. tried to invade Cuba and failed. The U.S. military did because JFK pulled air assets. The Joint Chiefs of Staff proposed a false flag attack. What they wanted to do, it doesn't go into it here on my notes, but what they wanted to do was shoot down an airliner because this was before their travel between Cuba and America was barred. Like
When
there
you
was
say
still
you say they,
the United States government, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and CIA, and the President of the United States at that point. The President of the United States is the one that canceled this. But Joint Chiefs of Staff, Department of Defense, and the CIA wanted to shoot down an airliner traveling from Cuba to Miami and present it as a false flag and wanted to present it as Cuba shot it down to justify us invading Cuba and getting rid of Fidel Castro. This was called Operation Northwoods. It was signed off by the director, Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest ranking military member besides the president in the United States. It was going to be carried out by the CIA. Um, and yeah, it was going to be killing American citizens to justify us going into war under under the false premise that that Cuba did it to justify us going to war with Cuba and removing Fidel Castro.
Now, when we talk about CIA, the only kind of reference that I have is like DEA.
Yeah.
I've worked with DEA agents, and so I kind of understand their world, and I understand how you would how an undercover officer would work in that in that environment. What is what is the CIA doing? Um, like how are they implementing these things? Do you think?
Well, what the Operation Northwoods called for is they wanted to use Cuban American trained Cuban nationals, so like enemies of Fidel. They
Yeah.
wanted to give these militia people, these rebels, these freedom fighters that were on our side, they wanted to give them this missile system, teach them how to use it, and tell them what flight to shoot down. That's what they wanted to do. That was the plan. Was to
Wow.
yeah, the CIA to train, equip, and fund these Cuban freedom fighters to shoot down this plane to justify us going into war against Cuba. The only person to shut it down, to give it the only red light, was JFK. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, nothing. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, JFK is the one who shut it down, gave it the red light. He fired the director of the CIA and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So, and what's funny, or I don't know, maybe it's just a coincidence, is after JFK was killed, the person who headed up the Warren Commission, I had a brain fart. The person who headed the Warren Commission was a commission that investigated JFK's assassination, was the former director of the CIA, the guy that he fired for Operation Northwoods.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Declassification fallout. 1997 documents were declassified about Operation Northwoods. Proof of the government's willingness for false flag operations. Let's see. Um, Similar to the main incident in 1889, similar to the Gulf of Tonkin for the Vietnam War. This is by the same people who later committed the Gulf of Tonkin. Uh, yeah, that's another thing worth mentioning
So,
that's not in here is this premise of a false flag operation to justify us going into war was shot down by Kennedy, but then just a couple years later was used to is what got us into the Vietnam War was the Gulf of Tonkin, which was a false flag operation.
which is also verifiable.
Verifiable, declassified,
Man,
CIA website.
what once you start thinking of the possibilities, once your government is willing to shoot down a passenger airline
Yeah, with
that
American
that's
civilians on it.
flying to, regardless of where it's going, but it's flying to America. Man, that opens up a lot of options.
Yeah. And so then you find out you start to pair that with all this other stuff, like pair it with through USAID, the federal government, you could say the CIA directly, but definitely the federal government was influencing the media, was influencing all these other programs going on all over the world that are obviously money laundering operations. Like there's no $27 million worth of condoms going to Palestine. Someone just got 27 million bucks is what happened.
Right.
Whenever you
And honestly, probably some people when they wrote those line items probably thought it was pretty funny because
yeah,
nobody's
no
because
one's ever
nobody's
going to read
ever
it.
going to look at this.
Yeah, you start putting these pieces together, and man, you start falling down this rabbit hole, which is kind of like depressing, or maybe like black pill, like you get kind of doom and gloom. But you definitely start to question everything, and you can start to almost like doubt everything. Like, what isn't a conspiracy? Like, what does the CIA not have their hands in? Like, who's not controlled opposition at this point?
Yeah. I mean, are you suggesting that there is something that they're not involved in?
Yeah,
Because at this point, like I said, within the past I don't know, past little bit, I've really learned a lot about the CIA, or just our government's involvement. Period. It was really interesting about that musician. Do you remember that part?
Uh-uh.
There, there was a part where he was talking about the we had funded some. I don't even know how it worked, but basically, our CIA had propped up a musician that had had success, and the purpose was like creating uh, a revolution, or creating like the whole idea
I
was
don't know, but that's
destabilization.
an old trick that the CIA has done many times.
Yeah. So think about, have you ever thought to yourself,
That's part of the Manson family connection too, was music.
have you ever thought to yourself, how are some people, why are some people celebrities? Why do we know this person?
Yeah.
Could it be that there's a whole bunch of money behind it?
So
Uh,
you sound crazy for saying that.
but the
But then
you
you
would
hear
have,
that they planned on shooting down a plane from Cuba, and the
yeah,
only person to stop it was a president that got killed a couple months later.
yeah. And so that's, so when I say that opens up a lot of options, boy, there's not a lot that you would, that you can't, don't have to think that they, you can't say that they wouldn't do.
Well, once killing American citizens and even an American president is on the table, everything's on the table. Like then, oh, well, maybe there is a basement in underneath a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. I don't know. Maybe there is an island in
Uh,
in the Caribbean. I don't know. Maybe
oh
there is
man,
a group of these
you just
people.
you just violated the community standards. I'm sure of it.
Oh no.
I'm sure of it. Uh, but I mean, you can't say we wouldn't do it, and
No, that's the thing. Is you can't say we wouldn't do it because we've done similar things.
yeah. And I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. Do you really think that we've gotten better?
Or yeah. Yeah.
By better, have we gotten more moral or righteous or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah.
Have we gotten better?
Have we seen the error of our ways?
I feel
No.
like the answer is no.
Yeah, obviously we just got better at hiding our tracks.
Yeah, we're, it's the same, it's the same thing as, the kid that keeps, he's still going to do what he's doing. He's just going to do it differently.
Yeah.
That's that's all they're doing.
Well, it's just like me whenever I wanted to smoke cigarettes and shoot out people's windows with BB guns, walking the streets as a 7-year-old. I learned later on that I could still be that same asshole as long as I put on the Mr. Christian face and gave everybody what they wanted to see. As long as I could say the words to make people look the other way and make them think that I was a little angel, I could get away with whatever I wanted to. Because I got
Yeah.
good at hiding my tracks, and B, showing you what you want to see versus what is actually happening. And that was 7 to 13-year-old asshole Clayton. You think the Central Intelligence Agency,
Yeah.
might be a little bit more superior at that?
Especially because all of these things, all of these revelations, all of these declassified documents compound, right? So
Yeah.
like we do know that they've tried mind control.
Yeah.
Like that's an actual thing. Uh, we do know that they've tried some. Well, we don't know; it's not corroborated, but we have reason to believe that they've tried something similar to a Manchurian candidate.
Yes.
We do have proof that they've killed American citizens. We do have proof that the government is willing to not only kill American citizens, blame it on someone else so they can go to war.
Yeah.
We also have proof that we are intentionally interfering with pretty much every other country in the world. We're fiddling with their politics.
And even still, you'll hear today, and I heard it on Mike Baker, like maybe today or yesterday, The argument is, well, if we don't do it, the other people will. That may or may not be true, but I still don't think that gives you a green light to do it.
I mean, not again. I'm willing to say that there are certainly things at stake that we don't know about.
I'm not the president of the United States. You know what I
I
mean?
don't.
I'm not paid to make these decisions.
Well, and there's a high probability that there's a bigger game at stake that we're just not recognizing.
Yeah.
But some of it, there's just no there's just no explanation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the atom bomb thing. Like people will still argue that we had to drop the atom bomb, that like it's what saved countless American lives and it's what ended the war. So, yeah, they use that as a way of justifying microwaving millions of people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Um, and my view, and I'm not the only one, I got this from someone else, is that that still doesn't make it right. Like it's still not okay to drop two atom bombs on Japan, a country that everyone says was about to surrender. Like they were just really getting the logistics of how they were going to surrender in line. And we knew that. And we knew Pearl Harbor was going to happen before it happened. But we knew that Japan was about to surrender. We still dropped these two bombs. And really, the only real justification was to see if it worked. And we wanted everyone else to know that we had them. We wanted the Soviet Union to know that we had it. We wanted any Nazis that were left to know that we had it. We wanted the world to know that we had these bombs and we wanted to know if they worked. So that's the real justification of us dropping those two atom bombs on Japan. And I don't think, like, I know those things can be true. Like, yeah, maybe that did end the war. Like, yeah, that can be true. That did end the war and that did theoretically save some lives. But it's also true, I feel, that that's not a good enough reason to do it.
Correct. There there's got to be a different there's got to be a different approach.
Yeah.
I don't think that once 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 that happens, you can't trust your government. And
No.
if you can't trust your government, then I mean, there's a lot that I'm willing to die for, but not probably somebody that's not willing to die for me.
Well, that's kind of the premise of these shows. What's that hero show on Prime with like the superheroes that turn out to be bad? It's the same thing in this cartoon version called Invincible, but what I'm getting at is like these superheroes that are so powerful, like a Superman figure, that's so powerful that no government in the world would be able to control this guy. Well, luckily he's on our side. Like, luckily he's fighting for us. Um, and the argument's always presented in these shows, like, yeah, is is that make it okay? Like, do you still want someone with this power to exist? And
Hmm.
the point of the shows always come out like, well, yeah, it's worth it in the end. Superman's a good guy. Or in some of these Prime shows, it's maybe the opposite approach. But the argument can just as easily be had with the United States. And you can lump in Russia and China into that too, maybe, but it's still really the United States. Like, do we want the US to be the one that affects everybody's election? Do we want us to have all the biggest, baddest weapons in the world? Like, that's the same thing as having the unstoppable Superman. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And I think the answer is no. Well, I mean,
I think it has to be no. It's
is
like,
it is it is it true that if it's not us, it'll be somebody? Is it true that it has to happen?
well, I don't know. I mean, the skeptic would say yeah, like if we don't do it, then Russia's going to do it. But maybe the real lesson to learn from this is, well, let's stop the behavior that gets us to the point where we're creating these technologies or we're creating these systems of like the social welfare or whatever the other atom bomb is, that we have to have this, the necessary evil, the necessary evils. Let's stop getting on this road where we have to have these necessary evils so that we're not put in a place to where if we're not doing it, someone else will. It, it's
Yeah.
it's it's a whole mentality shift. Revolution that has to happen, brother. The revolution is in your mind.
we're we're in the revolution, brother.
Yeah.
I just switched a couple accents there. I'm not sure not sure what either of them were, but
Was that an Irish hillbilly?
I started one and then I skidded into another, and I was like, I threw it.
Irish
Threw
hillbilly Macho Man Randy Savage?
it.
We're
I'm
in the revolution, brother.
Macho O'Rourke, would it be? Or,
Macho McFadden.
there you go. Oh, there was you remember Rowdy Roddy Piper?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was he was Scottish, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about
Uh,
him?
well, I was
Oh, well,
just
yeah,
saying
he
there's
was the
already
Celtic wrestler. Yeah.
there's already one of them.
Oh, Rowdy Roddy Piper.
I never really cared for him. He always annoyed me.
You know, I feel like I missed the wave. I was not a real-time fan of Rowdy Roddy Piper, but I'm a fan of his legacy. I'm a fan of the attitude. I'm a fan of the badass in the kilt. I'm a
Yeah.
fan of that persona, but I wasn't a
Mm.
real-time fan of Rowdy.
Now, I have, I think that you have to have adopted a policy of live and let live. Like you just do your thing. I don't care. But what about the dudes that are wearing kilts to maybe it's a Celtic event, maybe it's not, maybe it's a concert, whatever. Like
Man,
is
this is
that obnoxious to you, or is it like that's cool, bro? Because to me, I'm just like, seriously, man. Okay,
I was
okay.
about to ask you if I told you the story, and I obviously haven't by the way that you're talking right now. I don't know if I want to get into it or save it for another podcast, but the time that I wore a kilt in Scotland on a church trip and I wasn't wearing underwear underneath it, and I ended up
Of course
sitting in,
not.
I because you're not supposed to. I ended up sitting in front of the church, like where the choir sits, and I didn't, I didn't know I was going to be there. And I 100% showed my nuts to a church in Scotland. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much the story. I wore a kilt. we we're we're on a church trip to Scotland,
And you
and
showed your balls.
I showed my balls to a church.
That's I'm gonna start. I'm gonna say that when I think you're embarrassing yourself. Clayton, you're showing your balls. Clayton, knock it off. Your balls are showing.
Oh
I,
man.
I know I told you about man, I don't know if I can say this without I really like this guy. This is a good friend of mine. So I'm
Well,
not like
let's leave about 5 seconds of silence before you do this. That will get my attention to edit it if we have to edit it. Okay.
there. I think I told you this story of when I was in investigations and one of the guys up there was a little bit larger than others and great dude. I love him. Great, absolute great dude. So I'm not talking trash, but he's a bigger dude.
Yeah.
Hard to find clothes that fit.
Would you say he's your best friend or has been before?
No, no, no.
Oh,
No,
okay.
not this dude. Um, the guy that I'm talking about is significantly larger.
Okay.
Regardless, that doesn't really matter. Um, at lunch, the way that the cubicles were uh, situated, it was kind of like a like a square where these desks faced each other and those desks faced each other, and we could all just kind of talk. So at lunch, we would all kind of zoom in and we would just talk, hang out, whatever, eating our salads and stuff. Well, he had gotten a slit in his pants, and one of his balls was was like poked through the pants.
Uh-huh.
It was just a fleshy ball, just dangling. But I mean, I didn't call. I What do you do about that?
You
Like,
didn't call that out. You just let him hang his ball out there.
he's gonna figure it out. I'm not. Can you imagine if I don't want to know if my balls are hanging out.
Have you ever been frozen? I imagine you kind of were in this moment, but have you ever been like frozen, not with fear, but with like fear adjacent embarrassment for someone whenever they do something like with a ball hanging out? Uh,
I think I have. I didn't at this moment. At this moment, I was trying not to laugh, and I was trying not to call attention to it because I didn't want to embarrass the guy because his ball was hanging out. But I do feel like I know what you're talking about, but I didn't feel it in this scenario.
I might cut this story out. This whole thing might be cut out. We'll see. I I don't know if I want to tell the story. I went to a family member's house when I was a teenager for Christmas, and this family member was like in my grandparents' generation, like was much older than me, an elderly person. Ugh. Well, I was a young teenager, like maybe before 13. It might have been like 12. And anyway, this old female family member, we got there at night. So when we got there, she was in her nightgown, which is whatever. Well, she had a gift that she wanted to give me for some reason. Like an early, she's like, "Oh, I got you something special." And she went over to where the presents were. Probably gonna cut this out. She went over to where the presents were and bent down to pick up a present. I saw everything that she showed. And I remember like having this ice water feeling going down my chest of like, you were not supposed to see that.
Yeah.
Like everything has just changed for you. What has been seen cannot be unseen. And I remember thinking like, should I tell someone?
you,
Should I
you see to tell somebody that's selfish. That's that's just for you. They don't they don't want to know that because I guarantee you this. If you had sat there if if you were sitting with a group of fellas and then you go to the bathroom later on, you're like, what the crap? Oh man, I wish I'd worn underwear today. Oh, there's a big hole in the bottom of my You're gonna think, well, I hope nobody noticed. Well, nobody said anything, so I'm good. And
no harm, no foul.
you're gonna tell the story as, I mean, yeah, I had a hole in my pants. Wish I'd worn underwear. But it's a douchebag move for me to be like, hey, bro,
Hey, bro, your ball's hanging out.
look at this guy.
Now everyone's laughing. This guy's super embarrassed.
That's rude.
I
No,
can't show. Yeah. Okay, I agree with you. You know
I'm not
what?
that kind of guy. Yeah.
You're right. As
Um,
all as maybe not always, as very often.
very
Just
That's very often. That's what I try to keep 91%,
oh yeah.
91, 92. Because where I come from, I come from the old grade system where that was an A.
That is an A.
No, I think an A is like 94 and above these days.
Get out of here.
I'm pretty sure.
What is this? The gulags we're sending our kids to?
Well, occasionally our kids are out of school so often these days, which I'm not necessarily opposed to. If your kid has to walk to school and it's wind chill is 20 below, yeah, they probably shouldn't have to walk to school. But I don't know. maybe they could run a bus system for kids that don't normally. That's a brilliant idea. I just and
A
I want
public
credit
transit system.
and I want credit for it.
Yeah, yeah.
You could
Jesse just
have
had this invention.
you
No
could
one's
have
thought of this before.
listen, you could have buses that
I'm thinking a vehicle. Wait, I'm thinking of a vehicle, but not any normal vehicle.
have to be long.
It has to be long and tall in case there's speed bumps. You don't want to be held up by any speed bump
Yeah.
or any obstacle in the road.
Yeah. You could design it where it's just like a bunch of rows. But
Okay.
okay, so think about this. And it could pick kids up and take them
Yeah.
to school. So
Like
what
this
you
thing could
could
be designated just for taking kids from their
yeah.
house to school.
What I would probably do, I'd probably paint it a special color just so that like
Everyone knows.
yeah, so I am not getting on this bus to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Like this bus,
We're not going for
there's
to
a
funsies.
there's a different bus for that.
Yeah.
This bus is for school.
We're not
So
taking your work, Karen.
so yeah, so hey, normally I drop my kids off or normally my kids walk because normally it's 50 degrees whatever. They they can't walk because it's 20 below. Is there any way we could get them to school?
Excuse me, officer, I got an idea.
Could they ride the bus?
Could they ride the bus?
That's a dude. I'm
What
gonna
you need
run.
to do is patent this idea ASAP.
See, here's the problem, and this pisses me off. Okay, and I don't use that term lightly.
You're right. Oh my
This is a freaking this is a freaking good idea, and
Yeah.
somebody's gonna take it,
God.
and they're gonna be real cool, right?
Some
Somebody's gonna be like,
libtard is gonna take this and take all the credit for it.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly, and it's gonna push my buttons. I tell you,
Gonna grind my gears.
my gears are gonna be ground. Um, I actually I had a really good idea. I had something I was thinking of the other day that I was like, I've absolutely 100% been saying this for the past year. It was something Duncan Trussell said the other day. I can't remember
We
what
need
it
to
was.
investigate this government spending. You're like, you know what?
I wish I could
And
remember
now
what it was
everyone's talking about it.
because I heard him say it and I was like, that's what I'm saying. Like,
It was from the movie of me to the movie of we you were listening to.
No,
What?
no. I mean, I did listen to that, but this is something I watched just recently. It was just recently released.
Oh, okay.
But so my first reaction was, did he hear that from me? Because I literally have been saying this for years. And then I was like, honestly, man, that's awesome because it kind of makes me think about like the whole idea of the universe and us all being connected and
Group consciousness.
group consciousness.
Yeah. Which is something a very well established and foundational professor, Carl Jung, articulated in many ways.
He's my homeboy. I think I found that most of the things that I think are most plausible are like his philosophies come from his line of thinking.
Yeah, he tapped into it. He tapped into the source. He was connected.
Yeah.
All right. Let's keep talking, but I want to say bye to the podcast. Ready? Bye.
Bye. In fact, should I stop recording?
Yeah, but I don't want you to end us talking.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.